Hi, this is Nancy McClellan with Design Inventions, and today I want to do a little watercoloring. I've chosen an image from Altenew that I have heat embossed, and it is this sketchy floral stamp here. You can see it's a pretty large stamp. It's going to do more than cover an A2 card, but I have heat embossed it with the Altenew Rose, no, excuse me, it's copper. This one's the copper embossing powder. It's really, really pretty. And I chose these colors because I want to go with the pinky red tones. And it's on Canson watercolor paper. And I'm just kind of preconditioning my image here with a large paintbrush and just clear water just to kind of get it started there. And over on the right, I have a tile that I use. You can use any slick surface that you want. You can smush it down on a craft sheet, but I've just taken each one of my little ink cubes and smushed them down on the tile to use this as a palette. It worked better, for me. I don't have the re-inkers yet, so I would probably use re-inkers for this if I had them. So I'm starting this by adding a little water to my paintbrush, and again going back through the leaf there on that image, or the floral part of the image. And I have blush, rouge, crimson, and velvet. And I'm starting with the blush and just laying a little bit of color. It's very, very light. And then I'm going into the rouge and picking up water as I do that and just trying to lay that color in very loosely. When you emboss an image like this, it really does help keep the ink in a confined area. So I'm just going to keep adding in the different layers of ink and see how it just kind of progresses as I move from different areas of this image in the floral, the leaves. So I'll kind of speed this up as you watch me go through here, just laying in that light pink to dark pink and trying to capture all the little areas there in the image. Deciding which part is a flower, which part is a leaf. So getting all the pink parts done as much as I possibly can. There's lots of little tiny areas here that, you determine, is that a flower, is that a leaf? And again, it's whatever you choose. There's a couple of more areas that I need to do before I start on the leaves. And just be sure you add in some of the color. There are a few areas that I need to finish touching up. I did not pull out any type of a heat gun to speed this up, but you can see that I moved my way around the image and let some of the areas dry as it went. I think you have to, when it's embossed like that, you don't have to be quite as careful with the image. But if it's not embossed, you can get bleeding outside of the image and things kind of mush all together. So I worked my way around the image. Some of the areas are a little dark. I'm adding in that velvet color just as little dots into the center. So as the image still has some water and some wetness to it, it's going to just kind of blend into it. Now, you could let it be completely dark and go ahead and add those dots and they'd be much more vivid. So I'm going to go ahead and just wipe off my palette there, the little tile. I've just used a baby wipe to get rid of some of the red ink in preparation of laying down some of the colors for my green. And when I'm laying these down, I'm using the frayed leaf, the forest glades, and the evergreen. And it won't take a lot of evergreen, but these colors will be really nice ones to add with this pinky red tone. So I'm making sure that I've got my brush pretty well cleaned out. You can see I have like a towel that I just wipe my brushes on in between. You could use a paper towel. You could use any type of a towel that you have. That's just kind of like a microfiber towel that I use. So I'm going ahead and just laying in some water and some of the green basically for the leaves. It looks, I have a little bit of pink still in my paintbrush, but that's okay because it's just going to kind of brown the area up a little bit. Red and green are complementary colors on the color wheel, so you can use red or green to help shade one of the other colors and add some depth. But this one, you can see it's getting a little clearer and cleaner as I go. Going back and being very careful with those very, very tiny stems. And these are very sketchy leaves. Again, this is a very sketcy image. So I'm just working my way through with the frayed leaf and trying to get all the areas that I possibly can. And again, just a little bit of color, putting in some water into that area just to prep it a little bit to take the color so the color will move inside there. So as I just work my way through this image and lay down the first color that I have, and you can see again I've worked my way around the image so that I'm keeping, you know, my way. I kind of did it counterclockwise so that before I add another color. Now as I move, I see that I have an area of a pink flower down there that as it's dried, I'm not really happy with that. Again, the sketchiness is fine, but I'm trying to get it to move with some water, and it's not going to move out with some water. So I'm going to have to go and lay down a little bit more color and then try it with the blush and see if I can make a difference. And it doesn't look like the blush is going to make much difference, so I'm going to lay a little rouge down and pick up some water and see if I can get this to just not have quite that harsh edge that it was having. And you can clean the image up a lot as you go. And I'm kind of picking out some areas, but there's a lot of leaves that, and petals that don't have color to the edges, but I think that's a good thing. I like that. Now I'm going to go back, after I've cleaned my brush out, and continue. I'm going to start laying in the forest glades, which you can see is a little darker. It's greener. The frayed leaf was just a very muted color. And so the forest glades is going down just a little darker as I add that into the areas and more, the bases of the leaves, and I'm going to get some of these stems. Doesn't take much color, just a little bit as we move around. Speed this up a little bit, ensure that as I work my way through and lay all that color in there, I'm looking to see what other areas I need to add this color before I move to my next one. I'm going to add, I can dab out if I've got too much water, especially in those tiny little areas where those stems are. Even though that it's embossed and you have an area to confine the color, again, you can just use a paper towel or a tissue, something just to dab up if you've got some standing water there. So it's going to be important now. I can kind of turn my palette around to try to get into some of these areas and work more of the darker color as I get in there, the evergreen and the forest glades together, to get some of those stems a little darker and a little depth of color, and then move some color out. So these are tiny little areas of color, and again, it's perfectly fine if your interpretation is just a very loose effect. That's what I think watercolor is a much more loose type of effect than having everything so perfect. But as you go back and look at the image, you can correct some of the areas that have dried and add some more color and just evaluate where you think this is. Again, I did not take any type of a dryer to it to try and heat the image up and get it dry. It's very much just air dried at this point. I like to use a Ranger heat gun for that, if instead of I use a Wagner embossing heat gun, but I like my Ranger one when I want to do something with a watercolor image or just anything that I'm trying to dry the image down. And you can see I'm going back with a little more of the red and just perfecting some of those areas. and as it's dry, and I can even go back a couple of days later if I want to. If I'm not liking what I'm seeing here, I can add a little more color to this. This is strictly watercolored, but I can come back at a later time and I could add more color to it. I could even pull out colored pencils and add more definition to this. So it's just a lot of fun. It's relaxing, and you can mess with the image for a long time, or you could just leave it very simple. And sometimes it is nicer, I think, to just lay it and let it sit for a while. If this was totally dry, I could go back and put a color in the background of it if I wanted to, and I'm not really sure I'm going to do that at this point. I do like the way it looks, the softness that it has on the paper, the white paper, instead of adding like a blue or a yellow to the background, which sometimes I do. But I think this image looks nice just having it in the white. So I think I'm done. I like what I'm seeing, and I think I will probably call this quits. So thanks for sticking with me here.